Full house today. Thank you for coming, everyone. Once again, my name is Cody. I'm a product manager here at Synology. I've been with the company for about 7 years now, and I've been with IT for about 10 years, which is a little bit hard to believe. But honestly, technology is my passion, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to talk to you all today about the future of Synology solutions, especially as we're releasing ever more enterprise solutions out there today. Now, without further ado, before we look at the future, let's go ahead and check out where we have been. So Synology began around 25 years ago as a software company. Essentially, we started releasing software solutions to help our users better manage their data utilizing the Synology ecosystem. Now, soon after the release of those initial software solutions, we realized we needed to build a curated hardware and software ecosystem so that our users could actually fully see the vision of our software solutions. And so within a few years after the release of Synology Filer, you started to see hardware solutions from Synology such as DS101 and then in the future, the RS406 back in the day there. Now, fast forward to the day, you can see that we're now on the 7th version of our operating system, DSM7. We offer first-party cloud services through Synology C2. And of course, we have advanced storage solutions in the FS6400 and also HD, with the HD particularly actually able to store multiple petabytes of data in a single chassis and with expansion units on top of that. Now, today, Synology has over 14 million NAS out there in the world today, and we're installed at over 50% of the Fortune 500, 80% of the CAC 40, 50% of the FTSE 100, and 50% of the DAX 40 on top of that. Now, honestly, most IT firms today have at least one person that has experience with Synology solutions, either the hardware or the software as a whole. And the reason for this renowned popularity is due to the range of first-party software solutions and platform services that are available inside of the Synology ecosystem, either on the NAS or inside of Synology C2. Now, on this page here, you're going to see a range of case studies that are all available on our website. And these are all larger organizations that utilize Synology systems with great success in production. A couple of these case studies I'd like to pull out here. One is the University of Washington, which is actually my alma mater, and they use Synology systems to back up hundreds of machines utilizing Synology software. Pulling out some other here, Lottie World actually utilizes Synology storage in their production day-to-day operations at that overall amusement park there. Now, whenever we speak to IT professionals today here at Synology, we hear all kinds of considerations that are top of mind whenever you're going to go and make a new enterprise purchase or you're going to go upgrade your solution stack. Now, top of mind is always total cost of ownership. How much is this really going to cost me as time goes on? And then the next two most important considerations are usually ease of use and user experience. On the ease of use side of things, it's really how easy is it for me to admin this, even at the enterprise scale? And then user experience, how easy is it to get my users to actually use it the right way without too much pain and suffering, of course. Then, of course, we have the ecosystem considerations, how much synergy there is between all the different components in place. And lastly, less common but still a sizable population has innovation as a main consideration for choosing the latest solutions out there. But really, total cost of ownership is the biggest consideration, and we hear you that you're not seeing a ton of relief from other incumbent storage vendors on the market today. So because of this, Synology feels it's time for something new. It is my pleasure to introduce the Synology PAS 7000 series of devices that you can see right over here. And this is the new flagship model of Synology Enterprise Solutions, and it's the system we're going to be talking about at length here today. Now, before we begin into a technical deep dive, I'd first like to take a look at the specifications and the design intention of this specific system. Now, the PAS 7000 series of devices is built on the powerful AMD EPYC processor line, and it is able to push out a rated 2 million 4K random read IOPS, which is unprecedented performance in the Synology lineup today. It's able to do that on 1.6 petabytes of U.3 NVMe SSD storage, pushing all of that data through 100 gig connections, 12 25 gig connections, or of course 16 gigabit fiber channel on top of that. Now with specifications such as that, this system is indeed optimized for enterprise workloads, from storage for virtual machines on VMware, Hyper-V, container platforms as well, to even assisting the operations of databases that house the most important of your data, and even in support of EDA systems for those organizations designing the most advanced chips today. Now, to truly communicate with these enterprise workloads, there needs to be wide protocol support on a system of this nature. Now, I'm happy to announce that this active NVMe array from Synology is both file and block capable. On the file server side of things, this system supports the protocols you would expect from a Synology file server overall, that being SMB, NFS v3, and NFS v4 on top of that. Some additional protocols in the file server category in this case are also NFS v3 RDMA, as well as NFS v4 RDMA on top of that. Now, where things get very, very interesting is in the block storage protocols. Of course, this system is going to support the standard SAN protocols that you would expect from a Synology solution, that being iSCSI and Fiber Channel on top of that. But since this is an NVMe specific machine, there is also NVMe specific protocols that it supports as well, such as NVMe TCP, NVMe Fiber Channel, and NVMe RDMA over Converged Ethernet on top of that. Now, if you're not familiar with some of the NVMe protocols that are listed here, we'll do a little bit of an analogy. Now, NVMe TCP is to the rest of the NVMe protocols what iSCSI is to the SAN protocols. In short, NVMe TCP operates over a normal TCP IP network. You don't need a ton of advanced networking equipment to utilize that protocol effectively. On the flip side, NVMe Fiber Channel, NVMe RDMA over Converged Ethernet, there's specific equipment that you need to have in place at the entire chain to actually utilize those protocols most effectively. So now that we've taken a look at the general specifications of this device and the protocols that it supports and our intention behind it, let's now go ahead and take a look at a deep dive of the system. We're going to look at the non-disruptive services it can offer, high availability, resiliency, redundancy on the system to be able to offer that. And then we're going to take a look at the flagship performance of the system, and that is where we're going to get into some demos today. We're going to round things out by taking a look at the storage efficiency on the system and certain tools that you'll have to better manage this premium NVMe storage space. Now, we're going to begin here with the non-disruptive service offerings inside of the PAS 7000 series of Synology devices. To make things very simple out of the gate, it's essentially non-disruptive everything. So if you have a hardware issue and you needed to replace a controller, upgrade your RAM, replace a fan, all those operations are fully non-disruptive. And likewise, for operating system updates, firmware updates, and the like, those processes actually can be handled gracefully and handed off in such a way that your services are indeed not interrupted. So let's go ahead and take a bit more of a deep dive and get more specific into exactly how this is implemented on this system. So we're going to take a look at multiple tiers of measures that are in place to serve non-disruptive services out to those enterprise workloads. And we're going to start at sort of the foundational, fundamental component on any Synology piece of equipment, and that is the drives themselves. Now, the first most important feature in enterprise drives, especially SSDs, is the presence of power loss protection. Now, Synology SSDs today on an FS6400, for example, they already have power loss protection on that, and that's an industry standard for enterprise SSDs today. And the U.3 NVMe SSDs we're going to talk about in just a little bit also have power loss protection even at that hardware level there. Now, when we're talking about drives, if we're in the conversation of redundancy, of course, we need to talk a little bit about RAID. Now, Synology equipment already supports a wide range of RAID topologies, like 0, 1, 5, 6, 10, RAID F1, Synology's SHR. But this system is also going to support an even more advanced RAID topology, including RAID triple parity. And what that means is it has more fault tolerance than what a standard RAID 6 array would have with that 2-drive fault tolerance. Now we're going to begin stepping up the stack here, starting to take a look at the memory and the system tiers. Now, notice at the memory tier, we have memory cache protection. And that is memory cache protection. That's not an SSD cache or anything like that. The memory cache protection is there because since this is a dual controller active-active system, we actually employ a write intent mapping mechanism that we save to the memory of each controller. So what that means is that we have that memory map saved and we can replicate it to the other memory pool. And if one of the controllers goes down mid-IO offering those services to those enterprise workloads, the other system can pick up that IO right where it left off because of the presence of that write intent map that was stored in the memory in that secondary memory pool. Now at the system tier, this is going to be similar to other Synology high availability solutions and dual controllers out there today. But at the system tier, there's hardware level fault tolerance. If one of the controllers goes down, there's another controller lying in wait to be able to take over those services. Likewise, as mentioned, the software and firmware upgrade and failover, that is a graceful process that does not interrupt your services as it's working through that process. Now, the next two layers are, of course, the networking and the protocol tier. At the networking tier, there's a concept called IP failover. Now, IP failover is critical whenever you're utilizing a centralized storage solution like this, because you have various other systems out there that are referencing this storage device, referencing the IP address, the file pathways, the name of that device. So during a failover with IP failover, those details persist into the other controller. And that means that those other devices that are dependent on those IP addresses and other details don't have to be reconfigured during that failover process. It makes that whole experience that much smoother. The final tier is ultimately the application-facing or user-facing tier, and that is the protocols. At this level, it's all about increasing the amount of throughput, some quality of life improvements for failover scenarios, and also path redundancy on top of that. NFS grace period, for example, that is especially helpful during failover scenarios. But multipath input-output for iSCSI, Fiber Channel, NVMe over Fabric, that is a critical feature because that allows the system to have multiple paths to the rest of the network so that the system can adapt and sustain failures of devices outside of itself. So having MPIO can add that layer of redundancy, and there's more than one path, so you can get more performance there too. Now, all 5 of these tiers come together to give you no service interruptions and failover that occurs in under 5 seconds. Now, hand in hand with high availability and redundancy and other things of that nature, there's also data security with a system like Synology devices. Because it's one thing being able to have data stored on a large system, have high availability. It's another thing entirely to make sure that it's safe. So at this multi-layer data security session here, we're going to start off with the foundational layer, the hardware layer. So since this is built on the powerful AMD EPYC platform, it has the benefits and all of the benefits associated with AMD Infinity Guard. Now, there's so many details inside of AMD Infinity Guard, so a couple details I'd like to highlight is this enables the system to have secure booting and also an encrypted relationship between the CPU and its memory on each controller on top of that. Alongside AMD Infinity Guard and all of the benefits that brings, you also have drive encryption. So the drives themselves will support encryption at that layer. And that's one layer of encryption I'd like you to keep in mind. And as we go up this stack here, you're going to see that we have more and more layers of encryption. Now, on the system architecture layer, there's things like access controls and MFA. Access controls allow you to build role-based policies that make sure only people in the right jobs have access to the correct data, right? And with MFA, that means that you can verify the correct person with the correct role also can access that data. Now, immutability and volume encryption are also significant features on this overall platform, simply because immutability means that your data stored in a specific area will remain unchangeable regardless. And with a Synology system, you will probably be storing valuable intellectual property on it. So having measures like immutability in place means that you can reference those valuable plans that you might use for manufacturing or what have you. Now, the next tier is volume level encryption. So that includes packages and anything else on a Synology volume. So now we have encryption at the drive level, at the fundamental level, and also volume level encryption at the system architecture level. Now, that's 2 layers of encryption. And if you actually choose an encrypted protocol for file transfer, then your data will be encrypted in flight on top of that. The last couple things we're going to talk about on the data security side of things is the overall login analysis capabilities and its file activity and ransomware monitoring. login analysis is great for understanding who actually has access to the system and what files they're accessing on top of that. This is critical for auditing, especially in compliance-bound environments, especially HIPAA compliance. That must be turned on to actually be able to be fully compliant with that. On top of all this, there's the file activity and ransomware monitoring. That's actually implemented inside of Active Insight. And this feature, I'm happy to say, has been out for around 3 years, already serving a wide range of Synology devices in the fleet out there. And I'm happy to say that ransomware monitoring is fully usable on side of the PAS devices as well. Now, we've talked about data security and high availability alongside this device, but one new feature I'd like to highlight that is coming to the Synology lineup with this device is synchronous replication. Now, synchronous replication essentially allows you to have 2 PAS series devices in lockstep with each other. And as you're having some writes go to the first PAS device, it'll automatically start to write to the secondary one. Now, that means that this is a synchronous replication. It's continuous and it's ongoing. So this differs from snapshot replication if you have experience with that, because snapshot replication, if you remember, can go down to every hour or 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes if you have a high performance system and you have all SSDs. That's usually our recommendation on that. So while snapshot replication is great for disaster recovery and things like that, if you're in an enterprise environment, sometimes 5 minutes in terms of a snapshot cadence is a little bit too long. And having the synchronous replication in place really fits those enterprise workloads that much more. Now, I'm happy to say that we are adding synchronous replication to the repertoire of disaster recovery for the PAS series device. It'll also support the other Synology packages that you might also be utilizing inside of your disaster recovery stack, including snapshot replication and hyper backup. So the PAS series device can go to another PAS series device. A PAS 7000 device can go and snapshot replicate to regular DSM, to an FS series device, an HD or an SA device that you might already have deployed in your backup topology. Alongside that, it also supports hyper backup to secure data locations. So with all this in mind, you can understand that this system is going to be a cornerstone of our signature 32110 and hybrid cloud deployments moving into the future. So now we're about to go ahead and take a look at our flagship performance on this system. And we're going to first take a look at how that's possible on a system like this. And it's really because of the end-to-end NVMe architecture on a platform like this. So it's one thing to be able to just jam some U.3 NVMe SSDs into any old box. What we did in this case is we actually built this entire system around the drives from the ground up. We did not repurpose another rack style that we had previously. It is a ground up built system around those U.3 NVMe drives. So alongside the NVMe SSDs, we also have the 4 100 gig network connections or 12 25 gig connections depending on your network needs. And alongside that, we also have the NVMe native protocols that you need to utilize with the system to really get the main performance out of it. Now, when you have all 3 of those components working in unison, then you can really serve that heavy performance levels that high-performance VM backups need, that AI needs for training, and things of that nature. Now, this is all made possible on the next-generation U.3 Synology SSDs. I'm happy to announce that these drives will support encryption on the drives themselves, so expect to see more details on these SSDs as we get closer to release for the PAS series device. These will launch alongside the PAS 7000, and you'll see all the data sheets associated with that in the near future. Now, in terms of overall flagship performance, we've talked a little bit about the specifications on the PAS 7000 series of devices. But what I'd like to highlight here is that the PAS 7000 series is around 3 times as performant as our previous flagship devices, the SA6400 and the FS6400. And as a reminder, the FS6400 is a true all-flash array and was our main all-flash flagship device. And you can see it's around 3 times as performant, and you might immediately assume that this is at a 4K block size IOPS measurement or what have you. However, I'd like to draw your attention down to the bottom here, and this is actually on an 8K block size with an 80% read and 20% write environment with around 1 millisecond of latency. So what that means is it's a little bit different of a performance metric than maybe you're used to from Synology systems on our website, for example. We usually performance benchmark at that 4K size. So we're about to reach critical mass today here in this portion, and we're going to begin framing our demo portion. I'd like to also introduce Lily and Yo-Yo to the stage here. We're going to get them settled, and they're going to be assisting me in doing the performance demo for this PAS Series device here in just a moment. So before we take a look at this demo environment, I would like to first frame what we're all about to see. So what we're going to be doing in this case is we're going to be simulating what is called a boot storm in a virtual desktop environment. Now, we're going to be booting a conservative 1,000 VMs in around a minute. And if you're wondering why we're doing the simulation in such a way, it's really because of the nature of VDI workloads on average. Now, VDI workloads, oftentimes, whenever you're speccing out your virtual desktop infrastructure, you estimate a range of IOPS that you need for your specific head count. And a common misconception is that you need that maximum range at all hours of the day, no matter what. However, oftentimes, on average, that is not the case. And the most performance demand that comes from the storage system and the clients actually occurs when all of your users log in at the beginning of the day, when they jump into those virtual desktops and sign in at that very start of the day at like 8:30, 9 o'clock, what have you. So what we're going to do is visualize this kind of scenario. So let's go ahead and begin this demo now. So as you can see, we're in our virtual desktop environment, and we have a ton of tiles of all of our virtual desktops rolling here. And we're going to bulk boot all of these VMs at once. And once that occurs, we're going to be able to see all the tiles begin to buzz here. And you can see they're all starting that overall boot process. Now, as we jump over to Resource Monitor on the PAS 7000, you can see it's pumping out hundreds of thousands of IOPS per second almost immediately in service of this whole boot process. Now, as we jump back over to the virtual desktop monitor that we saw, we can see a bunch of standard Windows login. And as we continue our discussion, you can see they're all concurrently booting and getting to that login screen as we see here. Now, jumping back over to the resource monitor, you can see that this is actually the peak we were talking about and what we simulated. This demand peak is now flattening out because everyone's done signing on, and that's really that VDI need. That's when they really need the most performance, is whenever they're signing on at the beginning of the day. Now, our next demo is going to be on SQL databases. And this is going to be where this device is serving as storage for SQL databases in this case. We're going to be simulating an enterprise environment with thousands of users. And in this environment, we're going to be looking at a random 80% read and 20% write mixed environment for this workload. So we're going to jump into the demo environment now and begin this demo portion. So as you can see, we are now inside of our PAS Series device. And we'll just give it a few moments here. And as you can see, we are now pumping out well over 100,000, 750,000 into a million IOPS for this kind of platform on the PAS Series device. Now, what we're going to do is jump over to the client side and check out a Grafana view of what the client is seeing from the storage array, the Synology device. You can see through this entire test, through all of the SQL operations, you can see it's pumping out over 1 million IOPS and less than 1 millisecond latency for this SQL database, showing that this device is ready for those enterprise workloads. Now, the last metric I'd like to highlight is how powerful the system is in EDA environments on top of that. Now, as we jump back over to these slides here, you're going to see that this system is able to actually pump out around 1,800 or 1,300 simulations per second in an EDA environment. There we go. So what we're going to see here is you can see that we have around the capability on this device to actually be able to pump out around 1,300 job sets per second in an EDA environment. And that's a critical number because at around 1,000 job sets per second on this single system is really that performance level you need to design the most advanced chips, designing nodes, AI chips, or automotive system-on chips on top of that. Certainly devices and CPUs 5 nanometers and under on top of that. Now here's a summary of all of the performance metrics we just discussed on this platform. And on this system, the standard performance number that you would normally see on our website is that 4K IOPS number. That's the one we're targeting. That is that 2 million IOPS number. The 1 million IOPS at AK SQL operations in an 80% read, 20% write environment, that is what we just saw in that performance demo. And one final metric I'd like to point out is this sequential operation here. Now what's really interesting is sequential performance on NVMe arrays is not often talked about because most cases, whenever you're purchasing an all NVMe array, you're looking for high IOPS and low latency, like what we saw previously in the VDI demo. But even in sequential operations, this system is a high performer. It's able to operate at 30 gigabytes per second sequential read at a 64K block size. So if you needed to do high-speed analysis in a sequential read environment, this would be well suited for that kind of scenario. Now let's go ahead and compare this system, the PAS 7000, to some previous generation flagship devices from some other incumbent storage vendors out there. Compared to the NetApp A250, the Synology PAS 7700 is around 2.5 times as performant overall. And if we take a look at the previous generation flagship device like the NetApp A800, the Synology PAS 7700 is roughly on par with that. Now, we've talked at length about the general performance that is available on this platform when you're using Synology devices just for virtual storage or file serving or what have you. And we mentioned that it's 3 times as performant as previous Synology systems. However, I'm proud to say that this system is also going to support additional Synology software packages like Synology Drive, Office, Mail Plus, Calendar, and Contacts. It's going to provide its full active NVMe nature to these services, which means that you'll have non-interruptive services in our entire enterprise productivity suite. And on top of that, even in Synology applications and that kind of lens, the system is still 3 times as performant as the previous generation on top of that in Synology applications. In fact, if we're looking at the level of connected sync clients that the overall FS6400 could do compared to the PAS 7700, the PAS 7700 can operate 3 times as many connected sync clients in that scenario, which means it really opens up the door of, really gives an opportunity to those enterprises out there to switch to the Synology Enterprise Productivity Suite, especially if their current collaboration platform is potentially changing their pricing structure overall. Now, the couple final things we're going to talk about here today is the overall storage efficiency that is available inside of this system. But one thing I'd like to make note of is that this is the system that is really going to make good on us hearing that you needed some relief in terms of total cost of ownership. And we will be bringing our disruptive pricing model to the enterprise storage space utilizing the PAS 7700. Now, I don't have a lot of pricing information here right now. However, you can expect to get our signature total cost of ownership levels even at this enterprise level on top of that. Now, back to the overall storage efficiency. I'm sure if you're a Synology user, you've hit the point where your head unit might be a little full and you're running out of storage space. And sometimes you just need to buy another expansion unit, click it in, and be able to begin storing more data upon it, of course, right? I'm happy to say that the PAS 7700 device is also going to support expansion like other Synology devices you're used to. The PAS 7700 device is going to be able to expand with 7 additional expansion units in a direct attach architecture. What that means in a direct attach architecture, you have consistent performance as you add each expansion unit. So there's not a daisy chain and degrading performance as you add expansions. It's all directly connected right back to the head unit. Now, I think many of us know in terms of the storage industry, NVMe storage is the most premium storage medium or one of the most premium storage mediums out there. So before taking a look at just raw increasing your storage size, I'd also encourage you to take a look at using your storage more efficiently, using a couple different Synology tools. Now, in terms of storage efficiency and maximizing that on the system, there's 2 sets of features that are really the highlight of this discussion, and that is the deduplication features, as well as, finally, Synology tiering between Synology systems. So what we're going to be discussing first is the deduplication methods that are inside of the system. There is going to be support for both inline and offline deduplication on this platform. And with inline deduplication, essentially calculations are done before data is written across the network and onto the SSDs. Essentially, the storage array is going to tell the client what it needs to actually finish out its library of data. Now, in this case, what that means is you're not sending as much needless duplicate data over your network, which means you're using your network bandwidth more effectively. But simultaneously, if you're not sending needless duplicate data to the array to ultimately write to expensive SSDs, then you're conserving the lifespan of SSDs, because SSDs have a limit to how much writes you can do upon them. There's a terabytes written number in all the data sheets that really play into the device's warranty. So by not writing needless duplicate data to the array, you're conserving the SSD's lifespan even longer. The other type of deduplication on the system is the offline deduplication. Essentially, the deduplication that occurs once the data already lands on the device. Now, this is the kind of deduplication that you get with Synology all-flash arrays like FS6400s and all of the Synology SSDs in there. This system is also going to support this offline deduplication. And you're going to notice we have a 5-to-1 ratio mentioned here, but honestly, your mileage will vary with deduplication. It really depends on how much duplicate data you have in the first place. If you're operating a known unique data set with no duplicate data, you will not see a bunch of benefits from data deduplication. However, if you have workloads that inherently generate a lot of duplicate data in the first place, then you will see potentially larger ratios than what we see here. Now, me personally, I'm from the US. We work with a ton of AAA game studios out of California, and they use Synology systems at length. Now, in that kind of scenario, they're actually generating a lot of duplicate data, because with those media creators, essentially, they build games with common assets. And whenever they go to package their work for the day and all the things they've changed in the game, they will sometimes dump some of their assets that are common and already on the centralized storage array into that submission folder and send it straight to central IT. So AAA game studio admins, rather than retraining the workflow of creatives, which is a very challenging thing to do, they'd rather handle the deduplication on the server side after the fact. And in that kind of scenario, where we're inherently generating duplicate data, they're seeing around 60 to 80% data reduction ratios in that kind of scenario. So that's just highlighting how your mileage can vary there. Now, the final thing I'm going to talk about in storage efficiency, and this is something I've been waiting for half a decade from us, and that is the Synology Smart Data Tiering solutions. I'm happy to announce that we're going to be able to set up a tiered environment between a device like the PAS 7700 as well as our more scalable systems that house a lot of hard drive, like an HD 6500 or an SA series device. Now, with Synology tiering, and with any tiering for that matter, you can usually designate a hot side and a cold side on top of that. So the hot side is going to be the PAS 7700 with that U.3 NVMe storage array, of course. And the cold side can be the HG and the SA. Now imagine you're utilizing the PAS 7700 as a file server, for example, and you're doing some work on that, and that project is finalized. Some of that data may age out in terms of when its last modified time is. It could be 30 days or 60 days old, for example. And you can set up a tiering policy such that the system will actually move that older data over to the cold and archival tier and put it on more economical storage mediums, such as what is available on the HD and SA devices, the Synology hard drives on top of that. What that means is you've now freed up valuable premium storage space on the all NVMe array. And now you can do more production workflows on it because there's more space upon it. What's really great about this entire environment is it's transparent from the hot side to the cold side. So whenever you log into the hot side on the PAS 7700, it can see the cold tiered data still. And you can call it up manually through the interface or have predictive algorithms predict what data you usually would call upon when things do need to be tiered. So there's some advanced predictive algorithms that could be in play there on top of that. It's important to note, you can see all that transparency from the hot tier, but also if you needed to just read the data specifically off the cold side, you could also do that on that end. But most typically, you're going to be interacting with the tiered environment from the hot side and just see that environment transparently. So now, as a review in this case, we now have scalability with 7 expansions, deduplication with multiple methods, and tiering that come together to give you a vertically scalable and horizontally integrated storage system that will intelligently migrate and move your data where you need it most, where it's going to be most valuable in the first place. Now, for Synology Enterprise Storage, what I like to highlight is that we offer various admin functionalities that are democratized. they're front and center in the UI. Other vendors out there, they may not provide those functionalities. They may be hidden behind CLIs, or they may be, buried in a third-party cloud platform that you actually have to purchase. However, with Synology, again, we've democratized all of those day-to-day admin functions, so you don't need rock star admins out there that have specialized certifications to be able to administer even an advanced system like a Synology device. All of your IT teams can be trained on administering this system. So, in review, we've talked a little bit about the PAS Series device. Its non-disruptive nature, its high availability, its redundancy on top of that. We rolled through some flagship performance details and the performance demos on that device, and we took a look at the overall storage efficiency that's available using some tools like the tiering as well as deduplication methods. Now, let's talk about the roadmap for this new series and this new product line. So the PAS 7000 device will be the first device launched and will be the new top-of-the-line flagship device from Synology. And this is going to be the one that's for Tier 0, Tier 1 deployments with 2 million plus 4K IOPS and that 1.6 petabytes of NVMe storage. Please also note there's additional PAS Series devices that will be released in this lineup here. And those devices, like the PAS 3000, those devices are going to be for Tier 2 environments and will serve as the spiritual successors of our current dual controller models that we have in our lineup today. Now, I'm happy to say that the PAS Series is slated for launch in Q1 2026. I'm really hoping it's coming out in January on top of that, but expect to see some additional details on that matter in the coming months. In fact, we do have some VIP proof of concept testing opportunities that are upcoming. I believe we're going to start that process in August. I'm already speaking with several VIP customers in the United States about doing some testing. So if you're interested in piloting some proof of concept testing with the Synology PAS 7000 series, please come check us out at our booth downstairs at J1018. And if you're in the US and you want to do some proof of concept testing in the US, please talk to me specifically because I am the liaison for this whole process in the United States. So please come see me down at our booth downstairs. Now, overall, Synology envisions this platform serving the most demanding industries in aerospace, semiconductor, AI. Really, this system is going to be the one that helps organizations make that lasting impact that is a part of their main missions. Now, we're going to do a little bit of a visualization here of the overall Synology storage system lineup. And in this scenario, you're going to see that we have our primary storage side, which is where we have most of our product lines now. And there's also another side of the storage market that is called the distributed file system and object storage side of the market. Now, when we take a look at the overall Synology ecosystem, you can see on the left-hand side, the primary storage market is well filled out by the Synology lineup now. We have RS, SA, FS series devices handling archive and Tier 3. We have the PAS 3000 series coming out later in 2026 to handle Tier 2. And we have the PAS 7000 series coming out early in 2026 to offer support for Tier 1 and Tier 0 environments like virtual desktop, AI training, EDA simulations, and things of that nature. One other thing I'd like to highlight, and one detail I'm not really able to talk about in great depth today, is the GS 3000 series. Now, we actually have a sample of that device downstairs at our booth today, and the GridStation 3000 series is something we've teased for a little bit of time now. Now, GridStation, I'm happy to report, it's moving along very well, and this will also be released in 2026 on top of that. GridStation is an exciting system for us because, as you see, it serves as our entry into the object storage market, and will offer on-premise S3 object storage capabilities all inside of the Synology ecosystem. Alongside that, it will be weavable inside of the tiering environment that we've described. It will also be able to be replicated to and all of those other features that we described on top of that. So expect to see that new solution in 2026 as well. Certainly 2026 will be a big year for Synology releases. Now, one final thing I'd like to show as a visualization is the overall product lineup from bottom to top. And you can see that we have our edge devices on the bottom left, and on the y-axis we have relative I/O performance versus on the x-axis the max system capacity. And if you take a look over here, the PAS 7000 series is by far the highest performing and most scalable system we have ever offered in the Synology lineup. And with that said, we're about to round things out for today. We're going to now open the floor up to some questions And I'd like to invite my esteemed colleagues up to the floor to begin fielding some questions to all of you.